A jolly good morning to you. It's Saturday morning, and today we are 30 Days of Spectre with James Bond Radio, and the subject matter for today is rescuing Madeleine. With me is my co-host and dear friend, Mr. Tom Sears. Say hello, Tom.
Hello, everybody. I hope your Saturday morning has turned out lovely and delightful, and you've had your Frosties and your Alpen and all that kind of stuff, and you're feeling strong and ready to face the day. Now, I suppose we should begin by saying that the Rescuing Madeleine episode is focused on the post Hoffler Clinic sequence with the plane and the Land Rovers, not rescuing Madeleine at the end. We haven't skipped forward that far.
So perhaps we could change it to plane chase.
Plane chase, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
why not?
Plane chase it is.
Indeed. So basically what we've got here then is a little action set piece in the middle of the film.
Yep.
Bond's we've had the Mr. White scene. He sent Bond to the Hoffler Clinic. Bond shows up very on a Majesty Secret Service style, the way that's kind of perched on top of the mountain. Very much so, and obviously he's had his sort of psychological profile. He's revealed who he is to her. She's got the ump. Mr. Hinks comes along with his buddies and steals her. Bond gives chase. So that's where we are at in the film. Now, Do you remember? Did you see? I can't remember. So basically, the very first teaser trailer they released, the one you definitely watched, and we were like, "Oh my god, that's so exciting!" Blah 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 blah. Yeah. And then there was like an extended teaser that came out not long after, which just had flashes of action after the welcome, James. It's been a long time, so finally here we are. Did you watch that one or not?
I don't think I did. I think I remember seeing pictures of it because people had screen grabbed. So there are quite a few stills. And I remember seeing certain things going, oh, should I look at it or not? And so I might have seen a couple of stills, but that was about it. I didn't watch the whole thing.
Okay. Because basically the bit that came on immediately after that was him, that basically as soon as he comes out the door of the Hoffler Clinic and he takes the gun, shoots the first guy, takes him to the ground and then shoots the other guy in full goggle mode, which I thought was, I remember seeing that and being like, whoa, which was cool.
Did you immediately think Majesties when you saw that or not?
Yeah, without a doubt. What I was expecting here, I was expecting a ski sequence. That's what I thought was going to happen. When we heard about, Austria, mountain snow, I thought, oh, here we go. We're going to see Bond on skis again. And I'm frankly surprised they didn't go for that angle this time, actually.
Well, I heard in an interview that Daniel said that, well, I can't ski, I can't snowboard, so there's not much other option. Or in fact, it was Mendes that was saying it about Daniel. He was saying, well, he can't ski, he can't snowboard, what else is he going to do, sort of thing.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
They might have maybe gone for it if he could, perhaps, have done the basics, but who knows.
Maybe. I wonder whether he's just never done it before or whether he's tried it and he is just genuinely bollocks at it. That would be quite interesting to find out. But there we go. So this, I would say, this sequence is another thing I've seen crop up a lot with people complaining about the film. Like, this is another point that people make, which is, where did he get the plane from? Suddenly, they're bombing along in the cars, they got Madeleine in the back, and then all of a sudden Bond's in a plane. So what is your answer to that, Mr. Christopher Wright?
Okay, when I first saw the film, I must admit, I thought, bloody hell, where did Bond... Well, I did. I thought, where did Bond get that plane? And also, like, it happens reasonably quickly, I thought, well, he's got that quickly. Where's it come from? But obviously, I think a lot of people felt that. Upon second viewing, obviously he arrives by plane. He doesn't arrive by a nearby airport and then get a journey up the mountain. There is a landing strip right beside, it's a little bit lower down, but it's right beside the Hoffler Clinic. Yeah. Now, as soon as I saw that, it is very brief, but I was like, well, that's exactly where it is. Yeah. And he's obviously, that's where he's landed, so he knows it's there. He's obviously seen lots of other planes. It might be the case of, well, how did he get in one and fly away? Well, it's Bond. Bond does that, doesn't he? And in terms of the time, in terms of how quick he manages to do it, the last time I watched it, I remember thinking about it, and there's a fair bit that happens between when they're sort of driving away and when we see Bond. Yeah. So there is enough time because they're quite far down the mountain, I think, and we see bits with Q, we see bits inside the car, with Hinks and Swan. So within my head, there is enough time for Bond to get down to the airstrip and steal a plane and then go after them. So
Yeah, I think
I'm okay with it.
if you've ever driven up or down a mountain, those roads are very windy. They go back and forth around themselves. So it's kind of like, you have to snake your way down a mountain like that. So for them to get any distance away is going to take them a long time. So yeah, I feel like, there is that thing of, so you take a film like Casino Royale, and one of the things I love about that so much is all those little details that are just thrown in there that you don't see unless somebody tells you they're there. Like I've said a million times, like when he shoots Dryden and the camera moves as Dryden falls down, you just see that flash of the photograph on his desk of Dryden with his family, and it's there to illustrate what a cold-blooded bastard Bond is who just doesn't care and he's going to shoot him anyway. The whole Malacca chase where Malacca does some cool little move and Bond just runs around the car rather than flipping through it, and he's doing he's just trying to keep up, and it shows that Bond isn't a Superman. He's just somebody who's cleverer than everybody else and just deals with things in a cool way. And I love those details. Now, in something like Spectre, I feel like a lot of people are complaining that there are holes. One of the things I've heard is, 1 minute he's in the Hoffler Clinic, next minute he's coming out the door and he's got his goggles and his coat on and his boots and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, that doesn't serve, we don't need to see him sitting down, putting his boots on and putting his goggles on. That doesn't serve the story in any way. It doesn't provide anything to us. It's just a mundane thing that Bond does. I feel like the whole thing with the plane, we do get that glimpse of the landing strip. So yeah, absolutely, that's in there. I feel like all that would have needed is that thing where he shoots the two guys and Hinks is driving off and he looks at the cars. All it would have needed was for him to sort of turn around, look at one of the planes on the landing strip down there, and that's all that would have taken. Yeah. And I feel like that would have silenced a lot of the people who complain about that. Yeah. For me, I can add those two up, A to B. There's an airstrip right there. That's where he's going to get the plane from. So, you don't need to see him run down, get in a plane and then take off. Do you know what I mean? You don't need to see that.
No, we definitely don't. But I do agree. In fact, I did look out for it, and I think he does turn his head. But, the airstrip's way down there. So we know he's thinking about something. But I agree, if there was a shot, maybe a higher shot where you get a glimpse of the airstrip and you see him sort of turn his head or something, that would have definitely have made more of a link for some people. Yeah. I think if that had been there and if Bond had come out without the goggles on, I think it's the sunglasses that did it. It's because if he's in a rush, okay, he's, get his jacket on or his gloves or whatever, fine. But the goggles, you can understand from a logical viewpoint that, well, it's sunny, there's snow, he could be blinded. It would be better for him to have the goggles on. Yeah. But if he was in such of a hurry to rescue Madeleine, you can always also say that, well, would he be in too much of a hurry to put on the goggles? Wouldn't he just run out and try and do it? So there's arguments for both, I think, with that. I think if he hadn't had the goggles on and if we had a quick glimpse of the airstrip the second time, then I think everyone would have been, okay, fair enough.
To me, though, that's not one of those things that make me go, shoddy filmmaking, goggles or no goggles. Who gives a shit at the end of the day? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? That's my thoughts on it. It's for me, that's a non-thing. But I understand that, when I took my dad to see it, he was like, "Where did you get a plane from then?" And I was like, well, there was a landing strip there, Dad, down the bottom. If you'd have been a bit more observant, you'd have seen that when he arrived, and things like that. So I feel like, just that quick glance down would have solved that. I don't care if he's got his goggles on or not. Bollocks to it. Do you know what I mean? But then so there we go. Bond shows up in the plane. We've got them driving down the mountain, and he pulls up in the window. He's eyeballing Hinks, gives him the little salute. Yeah. I would have preferred an eyebrow raise or a wink, but maybe you can't. Maybe you can't do the eyebrow raise if you're not Roger. Do you know what I mean? I feel like you just can't do it because that's just not right in a sense.
Maybe they tried it. Who knows? Maybe they did try it.
Maybe they did.
Maybe there's outtakes somewhere of Danny Boy trying the Roger
and just looking really rubbish.
I'd love to see that.
Maybe he has no ability to separate eyebrows, and it's just he just looked really surprised or something. Yeah, that's a possibility.
I'd love to see that so much.
Wouldn't it be lovely to see those outtakes where Daniel just does something really rubbish, stupid, and how just hilarious that would be to see that happen. Yeah,
like just trip up or something.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
poor Daniel. Poor Daniel.
But I feel like the salute is like a a Roger Mooreism. That's a little nod to him.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he brings the gun out, starts shooting the side of the car. Hinks totally outclasses him, brings the double barreler out. Boom! Two massive holes in the side of the plane, so he has to kind of pull away. I really like that. I like it when Bond is outgunned and he has to use his wits. That's, I suppose, something to be said about this sequence is some of the great Bond moments are unconventional chases. Do you know what I mean? Like the tank chase in GoldenEye, for example.
Yeah. Chasing Octopussy.
Exactly. Or Little Nelly or something where whoever's sort of chasing each other or essentially fighting in a vehicle is the vehicle's mismatch. It's not just two cars going after each other. And this time we've got a plane versus cars, and it's not a plane that's got weapons attached or anything like that. So it's one of those where Bond's got to use a bit of ingenuity to make shit happen. I suppose. Yeah, I mean, I guess the tank chase in GoldenEye is a perfect example of that. And then obviously you had the motorbike chase, motorbike versus helicopter in Tomorrow Never Dies. So I feel like it comes from that sort of family of chases, this. So while that's all going on, obviously, we get a little glimpse of Madeleine being able to handle herself. You've got the guy with the syringe. He's about to inject her, and she does a little thing and gets it and injects him instead, which shows she's a strong one. That's a little nod to Tracy, isn't it? Tracy's not just going to sit there and take it. She's going to, she's going to get some balls behind it and get stuck in. Lovely. And then obviously we get that shot where they go down between the two trees and they look up and they see Bond's plane in front of them, a little speck in the distance, and then kind of plays chicken with them, basically. So how do you feel about that concept? How do you feel about that section?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good. I think Bond's got a lot of balls to do what he does with that plane, because obviously he's not got guns or anything like this, so he's got to work out a way to try and stop. So there's two big, Land Rover Defender 4x4s, and there's the Range Rover sort of sport 4x4 thing. So he's got to basically, these things are low to the ground. How else is he going to stop them other than go super low himself?
Yeah.
So I do like the way there's that little channel of snow in between the two banks of trees. Obviously they see Bond, and the way that Hinks sort of, I think he turns around to look at Madeleine, look at Swan, and then he looks up, and then Swan turns around, and then they both see this plane coming towards him, and it's a bit like, bloody hell, what's he up to? What's he doing? Is he a nutcase or what? And I do like the fact that Bond, well, a couple of things. First of all, there's a nice Live and Let Die reference where the wings get clipped off, like in Live and Let Die. So I thought that was quite nice. There's a bit where he sort of manages to clip the roof of one of the 4x4s, which then obviously, blows up sort of thing, as they normally do. And he's chasing the others, and basically it gets too low. The nose of the plane actually goes into the back of the car with Madeleine, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's bloody close, because it almost knocks her, so he almost gets her.
Yeah.
And obviously she sort of gets shit scared by it as well. And then they sort of manage to carry on, and then it sort of does that. It kind of hits a snow. It comes towards this. It loses its wheels first of all, and then it comes towards this big forest, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And he's got to turn, and it reminds me so much of Casino Royale. Where he's in the tanker truck coming up to the airplane. It's exactly the same sort of maneuver, isn't it? He's the plane coming up to the forest. He's like turning the wheel, putting all his strength into it. He's like, come on! And obviously he just gets enough sort of. I think the sort of rudder and the other engine, the propeller, sort of pushes him just enough to turn away. And then he sort of hits his massive snowdrift and gets airborne. Yeah. And then as the plane comes down, the tail of it rips off. So it's just basically the fuselage of the plane. And it's quite cool then, because he's bombing down, and then you see the Land Rover, the two 4x4s sort of turning that corner, and he sees this big sort of hut thing, doesn't he? And it's like revs the engine, picks up some speed, and then you got that shot again, very similar to GoldenEye. The tank bursting through the Perrier water truck.
Yeah,
is very similar to that, isn't it? The train bursting through the log cabin or whatever it is, with all the wood flying everywhere. Similar sort of thing. And I like the way he takes out. Obviously, he hits one of them, spins it out, and then the other one kind of goes into the back of it and spins the plane. Do you know what I really love is the way that Bond just kicks the door of the plane open and it spins it doesn't just like open once or fall. It kind of spins, and I don't know why, but I really like that.
I haven't noticed that. I'll have to look out for that next
Yeah,
time.
it's really cool. And then he gets out. I think one of the 4x4s is completely shagged, and then the other one, obviously with Hinks, he's through the windscreen. The driver's up and about, and Bond sort of shoots him, doesn't he? And then gets to Madeleine. What do you think about that? How it sort of rounded off that chase with the airplane sort of crashing into them? Do you think that was a bit far fetched, or was it too much based on luck, or do you think it was okay?
Yeah, I think that again, that's another sort of point of complaint a lot of people have is all of a sudden he's got this plane out of nowhere. He's doing this crazy sort of daredevil thing, wings being sheared off, and it's pure luck that he just rams into the cars at precisely the right time and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I can see it. I suppose it is a bit sort of far fetched in that case. I feel like, do you know when I saw, like I said, when I saw this sequence announced, it was like I fully expected to see Bond on skis again. You know, I really did. And I thought to myself, I wonder what that would have been like had they done, you know, like I say, unconventional chases, a plane versus a car, if we'd have seen Bond on skis versus them in a car. Yeah. And I feel like that might have been more of a classic Bond scene had we seen that. Do you know what I mean? You could imagine him sort of like, you know, with those windy mountain roads, you could see him like skiing and like skidding across the tops of the Land Rovers and down onto the next bit and firing off a couple of shots and stuff. You know, I feel like that could have been, I feel like if we'd have had that rather than the plane, I think we'd have had more of a positive response about this sequence. What do you know?
Do you know what else could have happened? In fact, which I just think would have been brilliant if we had Bond on ski. Right, so say Madeleine was taken away as she is, but not by Hinks, just by guys, just like guards, shoved in the car. So the cars drive off as normal. Bond sort of sees them. Like, you know how sometimes in ski resorts, basically people put their boards and their skis outside before they go in for like their lunch. If they had stuff like that outside the clinic, if people did ski, Bond would take a pair of skis or boots or whatever, like that, bomb it down the slopes, like do sort of jumps as it crosses over the road, you know, from one bit to another, and then obviously catch him up, hit the roof or whatever. But then Hinks rocks if Bond manages to outmaneuver one, and basically he can't follow where the road is, so he has to go down sort of a steep sort of snowy piste bit. Then a plane rocks up, and it's Hinks behind the plane. So it's Bond versus Hinks in the plane, and as Hinks is trying to like get him, you could almost have Bond jump on. You know, some of those planes have sort of ski, almost like skis, and if it was like a helicopter,
like a seaplane kind of thing. Do you mean?
Yeah. But you can get other ones that are like that, and or maybe even the wheels. But maybe if Hinks did what Bond was doing to the cars in the film, if Hinks tried to almost like run into him with a plane, a bit like North by Northwest, it would be like an homage to that, I guess. A bit like obviously From Russia with Love with a helicopter, and like and the wheels of the plane are getting lower and lower, and like Bond's like having to duck, and then at one point he grabs onto them, and so the plane sort of Hinks sees it and starts to rise, and then Bond basically, I don't know, he sort of drop off and then go down another bank and something like that. I think that would be, imagine like seeing Bond on skis holding onto a plane or something like that. I think that would be obviously a bit like License to Kill as well. But that might have worked. I don't know. Do you think that would have been too much or not?
No, you're getting really excited about that.
I am. Your voice. Yeah, I like sort of action scenes and stuff. Yeah, something like that might have been quite. I do feel it was okay, but for me, I have to agree with a lot of people that I never felt. It was okay. I never felt.
Yeah.
I wasn't overawed by it in any sense. I thought it was a little bit coincidental, but I think they could have done more. I think, like you said, if you had Bond on skis, something like that, or even in, I know
you could have rocked out some bonk in the score, just as a little nod back to Spy. That would be lovely.
Amazing. How cool would that have been? But I think, yeah. I mean, imagine. I would have loved to have seen Hinks in that plane, because he maybe Bond deals with the guys in the car, or like one of them gets away, the one with Madeleine, but he deals with another somehow. But then his plane rocks up and then chases him, and he's on skis, and it's like a plane. I don't know. I think that would have been really good.
Yeah, I think
Now
that's
that
what I mean. I
vision.
think because obviously we go. I think it's done reasonably well, but like that section where the wings come off the plane and the plane kind of lands and is skidding along. There's a pretty obvious CGI shot in that and stuff. And I think I think what we want from a Bond film, what everybody wants from a Bond film, is those sequences that are just a cut above every other action film out there, you know. And we do have that in this film. Like that pre-title sequence is a banger. That's definitely right up there as an all-time classic, you know. So we do have that. And again, like we always say, Bond should be setting records, and we had the record for the biggest explosion on film ever for the sequence a bit later on. So that's brilliant. So I suppose you can't do that with literally every sequence in the film, but I just feel like we haven't seen Bond on skis in a long time now. Pushing sort of what would have been like,
well, the world is not enough,
wouldn't it? So a good few years ago now. And I feel like if we'd have seen Bond on skis again, that would be another classic element of Bond back again that I think would have pleased more people than this plane sequence. I think.
I think another way it possibly could have been done, if we couldn't do skis, if Daniel was absolute bollocks, you know, and it wasn't worth.
I just love the fact that he's so rubbish at it that they just can't even consider Bond on skis for this sequence.
The insurance they'd have to take out, the insurance waiver would be like mental. But no, another way that I think it possibly could have improved without the whole ski idea, if the plane thing happened and we get the whole, you know, chasing it through that thing with the trees and you know, it breaks up and the wings fall off and the tail falls off. I think it would have to come to a point where rather than managing to turn the plane away from the forest, for instance, there's no way Bond can do it. It's like he's fucked, you know. It's complete. There's only one thing that's going to happen, and so he maybe jumps out of the plane just as the plane goes into the trees and maybe explodes or just crashes really badly. And then Bond's on feet, and then he's got to rely on his wits to try and catch up with the other vans.
Maybe he uses the door of the plane as some sort of surfing device, Chris. And then he finds a parachute in the back. He hooks the door on his feet and then parachutes down and parasails and takes on the cars. That would be a brilliant moment, wouldn't it?
Why did they not do that? But I mean, you know, it could have been just, I think they could have done something else. Maybe not that. But like, even if it, I don't know. I just feel it was missing something. I think it was missing Bond's sort of ability, and Bond perhaps being a bit more in danger, and maybe even Hinks's gun having so much of an effect that the plane bloody crashes. And imagine, the good thing about snow is you can, you know, there are people in World War II that their plane basically got shot, and even though they didn't have a parachute, there's records of people dropping like 15,000 feet and surviving because they landed in snowdrifts, like huge snowdrifts. And like, obviously we wouldn't do that. But in terms of, imagine if Hinks's gun had taken out the plane so badly that it was going down no matter what and it was going to crash. But, you know, Bond was going to have a better chance jumping into the snow by himself rather than landing within the rubble of the plane and basically imagine the intensity of Bond having to like jump out of a plane into the snow and just like landing and falling. A bit like, again, Casino Royale, you know, where he's hanging on to the side of the tanker and has to push himself off as the other thing comes. Well, maybe not. But I'd love to see that, and Bond jumping out and then the plane crashing and then again having to use his wits to kind of catch up.
Well, I think you're on a roll right now with potential ideas, man. You need to get writing these down for a future Bond movie or something. But
I'll try.
I do think that had potential to do something a bit more memorable with it. I don't think that plane sequence will go down as a classic chase sequence in the series. But again, like we say, I think part of the problem that Spectre faces at the moment is a really unreasonable level of scrutiny that people are putting at it, in the sense that a lot of the critics are complaining, essentially saying it's too much like a classic Bond film, when it's like, well, that's the Bond that we grew up loving and that's amazing. That's not a bad thing. That's an amazing thing. And then, you know, I feel it's up against it at the moment because it's the new one. Do you know what I mean? And everyone's getting the microscope out. And I feel like you have a sequence that is definitely a top 5 classic pre-title sequence, possibly even more, man. It might even be my favourite one ever, actually. I saw it again on Wednesday, and oh man, it blows me away every time. I just need to let it settle for a longer time to really rate it. But that is the problem, that it's facing this super microscopic thing. And let's face it, that's essentially what we're doing with 30 Days of Spectre.
Yeah.
But, I feel like, can you have a sequence where you open the film so amazingly? Can you literally have every sequence be a game changer in every film? You just can't. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like it's an unrealistic expectation of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, for example, I think like the sequences in Casino Royale, let's take an absolute classic film, for example. Right. And I feel like maybe that Miami airport scene, I wouldn't say that's going to rank as an all-time classic scene from the whole series, but it's a good one. It's a solid one. It does the job. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That's what I feel we've got with the Rome chase and with this one, I think.
Yeah. No, I do agree on some respect, although I also agree that if we're talking about ways that scenes can be improved, for instance, this plane thing, or at least how we think it could be improved, then that means that the writing isn't as strong as it could have been, or at least the action. And if they have got, if they can come up with something like pre-titles, why can't they come up with something as strong as that in different scenes? The money is not it's not necessarily the money, because the amount of money they would have spent on the Austria scene, they could have come up with something else, maybe with a bit more impact. You want to see Bond get a bit hurt, or at least be in danger. You don't want to see Bond cruise through a scene, particularly an action scene, because the whole point of an action scene is you want to see danger, you want to obviously see action, you want to see Bond either in peril or at least get injured, or at least be affected by it.
Yeah.
And with the Rome chase, he didn't really, but there was some nice payoffs, so that wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
With this one, I think, I think it could have been more in danger. I think like Hinks shooting it or something else happening, I think would have been better.
Yeah.
But here's an interesting question for you. Okay, so now obviously we're doing our 30 Days of Spectre. We've been doing the podcast now, obviously, after Skyfall was released previously.
Yeah.
And because we're doing this, we're analysing everything, which you and I would have done anyway, because that's kind of what we're into. But something tells me that this film is being scrutinised more than Skyfall was when Skyfall came out. Because I agree with you about something which we're going to talk about at the end of this little podcast, but there were a huge amount of sort of plot holes in Skyfall and certain things which didn't seem to be picked up, or people weren't too bothered about, or they were glossed over because whatever else came out.
Yeah.
And I think that if the same level of scrutiny was put to Skyfall that everyone seemed to be putting to Spectre at the moment, I think they would see a lot more. It
would fall
balance
apart immediately. Yeah, that's the thing I don't understand about Skyfall is like, to this day, Skyfall at this point is my least favourite of Daniel's movies. I came out of that one going, it was all right. It was okay. It wasn't really the film I wanted, but, it's a new Bond film. What the heck? But I feel like we said the other day, I feel like the criticism Spectre has against it, you could apply. I mean, I'm not talking about the whole brotherly thing, because that's a unique thing.
That's understandable.
And, I can see why people would hate that. I don't hate it, but I can understand why people wouldn't be keen. But everything else just doesn't make any sense to me. You could say precisely the same about Skyfall that all the critics are saying about Spectre. And I feel like I do wonder actually whether there's this thing. And when I say this, I don't mean this about the hardcore fans at all. I'm talking about the general movie-going public. Is that I feel like there's a danger that people will go and watch a film and then they'll wait to sort of almost be told what to think about it, in the sense that all the critics were going apeshit for Skyfall. This is amazing, this is amazing, this is amazing. And I feel like the general movie-going public, the people who, there's a new Bond film out, let's go and see what it's like, rather than people like you and me or the JBR listeners, they will sort of be swayed by the public opinion, the social proof that everybody loves this film, so it must be good. Yeah. And then the same works the other way. If the critics are panning something, then the sort of general populace, the herd mentality kind of goes with that as well. Yeah. And like I say, not the Bond fans I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the general movie-going public, which then can negatively or positively affect a film. And I feel like that's what we're getting with Spectre here, in the sense that some of these criticisms are just fucking ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. Again, the brotherly thing, I get it. I understand why somebody might hate that. I really do. But ultimately, it's amounting to saying that this film is too much like a classic Bond film. And I'm like, how in any way is that criticism. And it's I think, the mind boggles on that. Like, that is what we're looking at here. We're looking at a James Bond film. And I feel like they have almost been, like, the casual fans, I would say, call them, or the critics, have been trained by Daniel's last 3 films to expect something different, to expect a dark, brooding tale full of loss and tears and emotions. Whereas this one was like, do you know what? We've done that 3 times now. Let's do something a bit different. And that left turn has made the uproar. It's the same with the Sam Smith song. You get something that's different to what you're expecting. Doesn't mean it's shit. It's just not what you're expecting. And a lot of people's knee-jerk reaction to that is, well, it's not what I was expecting. It must be shit. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That's my take on it. What do you think?
I completely agree. But the interesting thing is, the British critics loved it.
They
were like you and I. They were like the majority of the JBR listeners, not all of them, but the majority. They were like, yeah, brilliant, classic Bond, loved it. It's great. The humour, loved to see that. Good action, this, that, and the other. And it was just strange that across the pond it was so different.
Yeah.
But we've had a lot of American listeners who have come on board saying, we're so happy, we've seen it now. We're so happy that we liked it, and the critics weren't right. And we have had a lot of that with our American friends, our brothers from Langley, which is nice to hear, obviously. It's just a strange. The thing is, okay, so Skyfall, say they all loved it. Spectre all hated it. The next one, does it go in waves? Because Casino Royale loved it. Quantum hated it. Skyfall loved it. Spectre hated it. Does that mean that Bond 25 has got like critic-proof review? Everyone's just going to give it glowing 5 stars.
Yeah, do you know what, mate? I wouldn't be surprised if there was, in the sense that the press as a moving, growing beast just has this thing of being like, do you know what? It's time for Bond to get a bit of flack. Let's just fucking pick on Bond this time around. And then, it just kind of serves that wave of whatever it is. I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, I suppose we're getting on deeper issues here, aren't we? Rather than talking about this chase sequence. But yeah, I think, to be honest with you, I firmly stand up with my hands on my hips and say those American reviews are utter bollocks. And I will argue anyone to my grave about those American reviews.
Have you got both hands on your hips, or just one, like a little teapot?
I have both hands firmly on my hips, with a raging erection at the same time, with my trousers round my ankles, Chris, because I love this film so much. Absolutely. You can come and deal with that if you've got bad things to say about Spectre. Anyway, yes. We've quite drastically digressed for a moment there, didn't we?
We have. I think we're allowed to do it every now and again.
We are. We have another angle to this whole sequence we haven't even mentioned yet, which is Q and his little ring scanner.
Ooh,
now, obviously, we get that little scene where Bond gives Q the Spectre ring, see what we can get from this. He gets in the chairlift. We get that guy kind of eyeing him up, and there's a bit of tension. We get the guy who comes in, and there's a little chase or whatever. While that's going on, he pops the ring on his little scanner bed thing.
Do you know what? I found out what it's called.
Go on.
A spectrum analyzer.
Oh, very nice.
Apparently, which is quite nice. Spectrum, Spectre, and all that. But apparently that's what it is.
So that was one of my things that when I saw the film, I was like, well, how did they get all that information from that ring? In the sense that he scans the ring, all of a sudden, Lashif's face, Green's face, even Patrice's face comes up on the screen. Oberhauser's sitting above him, and there's this family tree link. The ring proves it. It connects them all. And I'm like, hold on a minute. Well, that's a bit of a stretch. How can that one ring prove everything? Now, there's a couple of things to say about this. Number one, old Sam Mendes has come out in the Empire Spectre Spoiler podcast. He's interviewed on there for about half an hour. And it's really good, actually. I listened to it this morning. And there's a lot. The interviewer asks him a lot of questions that are good, solid questions about, joining some of those open loops of people like, oh, I'm not sure I understand that. And he asks those questions. So we get a lot of answers from that interview. So it's well worth a listen. The Empire Magazine podcast, Spectre Spoiler Special. Anyway. And Sam Mendes does explain the whole ring thing in that interview. So I think you have more of an understanding of it than I do, actually. So I'm gonna pass the shoe to you, Chris, and you can deal this hand.
Thank you very much, Banco. So initially, I think everyone was right in terms of the first thing you see is the DNA. So he's analysing the ring. The first thing he checks for is DNA. And obviously we know that Mr. White's had his DNA on it. We know Marco Sciarra's had his DNA on it. Those coming up, I think, is without a problem. That's obvious. Yes. We've seen that for our own eyes. Potentially you could imagine Oberhauser having his DNA on it, but that doesn't matter for now. So we'll say the other two. Now, what it then goes into is like a toxicology analysis. So it's basically studying the elements that make up the ring. So the different sort of metals and everything that are within this ring. Okay. Now, within that, apparently, is iridium. So there's the element iridium in it. Now, as the majority of people who are listening know, that meteorites often have a vast amount of iridium in them.
Oh.
So as soon as you obviously make that link, the meteorite that created the crater that Blofeld obviously holds up. Now, it's I guess it's presuming that they managed to extract an amount of iridium from this meteorite and then used it to forge some, at least part of the Spectre rings. So that is one of the potential sort of theories which I think can be confirmed.
Interesting.
So I think I really like I mean there are geographical and we should say there are geological sort of reasons why that might not happen in the real world, which we can gloss over just for now. But I love the idea that, okay, here's a meteorite. Blofeld's taken this bit out of it because he knows that this meteorite represents sort of a Spectre and it's been hiding in the shadows, creating all this momentum and stuff. And he's used that and then helped forge. Obviously, there are other metals in it as well, but helped forge these Spectre rings. And I guess that's part of the toxicology. So what do you think about that then?
Well, when I was having a little read of the leaked script the other day, I got to that scene and I had a little read through it, and there was an explanation in there which I think made even more sense, which was basically a combination of what you've just said. So basically DNA on the ring and a rare mineral in the ring. I suppose it's the same way of tracing Patrice's bullet, in Skyfall. Similar sort of idea, which is fine. And then what it says in the leak script was that basically Q then runs a search, not unlike the Facebook friend search in a sense, right?
See, we had it nailed.
We had it nailed. I'd love that if that was Q's thing. Let me just jump on Facebook, see who this fella is friends with, see who I can track down, and the whole Spectre network is friends with him on Facebook. Anyway, I digress. So, Marco Sciarra's ring, DNA obviously, and the mineral, and then he runs like a search of intelligence based on Marco Sciarra, of like where he's known to have been across the world, where he's visited, cities he's been at the time, and cross-referencing with everyone on their database of villainy. So it'll be like, oh, he was here with Le Chiffre, blah blah blah, and back 3 years ago, and Le Chiffre was connected to this guy, and when they visited this place, and it was basically a mixture of DNA, the mineral in the ring, and just general intelligence on Marco Sciarra and who he associated with that kind of linked all those people together. So for me, I feel like that's the most sort of answer that kind of makes the most sense out of everything. But from Mendes's mouth himself, it was basically the mineral and the DNA, those two things. Yeah.
So he mentioned that in regards to the mineral, obviously all the rings were made with that mineral, and they did post-mortem analysis of body. So they recovered the body of, Patrice, they recovered the body of Silver and stuff like that. And when they did the post-mortem on them, traces of this iridium element were found. So that's part of it.
Right.
But I do like the idea that, okay, we know it's Marco Sciarra. Let's find everything we can about him, where he was. And also I think the actual octopus sign, they sort of tried to see if it had been spotted before. Because if you think about it, like, they must have equivalent of the surveillance net. Okay, maybe not the complete surveillance network, but they'll have loads of access to data files of stuff like that. So I'm sure they'll have a system at MI6 where you upload a logo and it will show you what it is or where it's from. Obviously the Spectre one they wouldn't have known, but it might have been caught on a camera somewhere or something like that, who knows. But I think having the DNA, having the sort of element that that everyone who's worn a ring has, and also having the locations and everything following Sciarra's tracks, I think that all adds up, and I'm a lot more comfortable with that, knowing those three sides of it
Yeah, same here.
compared to when I first heard it. I'm a lot more comfortable with it now.
Totally, yeah. I feel like in the film it's presented as just a little bit throwaway, scan the ring, all of a sudden we got these faces and it's not really explained all that much. So now we've heard that from Mendes' mouth and seen that in the leaked script. I think that's interesting. That kind of ties that together a little bit more for me. So I suppose to kind of round out this sequence then, after Bond's kind of, crashed his plane into the cars and there's the pile up, jumps out, shoots the driver. Madeleine jumps out the back. She's not happy with him. She's got the ump quite plainly. She says that he's led them to her and all that kind of stuff. And they have a bit of a Barney, but quite rightly he says, "I'm the best chance of keeping you alive." So they bugger off. And then what I really like is how that sequence ends, where it pans over to Hinks lying on the bonnet of the car. You see his fingers twitch, not unlike Jaws' would when he was, fallen under rubble or whatever kind of nonsense he got up to. And then, like you pointed out, I listened out for this because I didn't realise this, but I listened out for this on Wednesday when I saw it for the 5th time. He does have his own little theme tune in a sense, doesn't he? Definitely.
And it's cool. And I love the fact that he has it. It's like Odd Job, bing, 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 whenever he rocks up. And Hinks has got his own tune as well. And it's cool. It's just a few notes. I can't, off the top of my head, I couldn't hum it.
It's like a very sort of intrigue like sound. It's like on an electric piano almost. It's like almost like a doo 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 or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
That sounded like diamonds.
That's not it, but like it's something along those lines. That sort of thing. And I noticed that's what you get when he first walks into the Spectre meeting, and that's what you get when he wakes up as well.
Which is great. And I'd love it if we get the same again. If we get him in Bond 25. Imagine if you don't see him, but you hear that music in Bond 25 and you're like, Hinks is around, where is he? And then suddenly he rocks up and that's his entrance. Maybe, well, I mean, we can talk about when we think he's going to tell him out, but that would be cool. So here's another thing from that script. I remember a point where they said the similar thing happened, but Hinks was buried under a pile of snow. So they crashed and snow went on him. And then it was a bit more like the Jaws in Egypt, with his hand through the bricks. So instead of his hand being on the bonnet and twitching, we would have seen like a hand creep up through the snow. And now initially I thought, oh, that's interesting, but I think it would have been a bit too much like, a mummy coming out of the ground. It could have looked a bit too comical, I think. I think having him on the bonnet, flaked out, seeing it twitch and then him slightly look up, I think that's a lot classier way to have done it, I think.
Absolutely. I think that was played just the right level. Like having that little theme tune, it's very understated and you don't even notice it until you notice it in a weird way, if that makes any sense. But like it's the same thing as like one of the coolest things about Winton Kid is whenever they show up, you get that amazing little mischievous do 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 do, and I love anything like that. So the fact that Hinks has got his own little musical cue in there pleases me quite a lot. So I guess that about rounds out today's episode, doesn't it, Chris?
It does indeed, yeah. So an interesting one. I think, the action wasn't bad. I love the gunshot on the plane. It sounds so cool. In fact, more of it I think should have been made. I like the Bond sort of going down in between the trees, trying to hit the cars, the wings coming off. I love that end with Hinks being knocked through. I think that's brilliant. I think it just needed a little bit more potentially danger for Bond, or a little bit more from an injury aspect or something like that. But I still think it's a decent enough one.
Yeah. Is it raining where you are?
It is.
I
couldn't hear it.
And I was like, goodness gracious me.
Yeah.
But there we go.
I couldn't hear it.
So yes, absolutely. So there we go. So all in all, to round it up, I guess, a sequence that does its job. There's definitely some potential for some improvement and some more classic bondage in there, but not a bad sequence. It's not like not a teeth gritter by any means. No. And it does its job. So, like I said, that rounds out today's episode. Before we go, just another shout out to good old Brett Spencer for making us some amazing graphs for the 30 Days of Spectre. When you see the YouTube videos or over on jamesbondradio.com, those amazing little episode graphics he's been making for us every day. So shout out to Brett. If you need a graphic designer, get him at Brett@brettspencer.com because he's bloody good. That's all we have to say about that. Thank you, Brett. So until tomorrow, James Bond Radio will return. I've been Tom Sears.
I have been Chris Wright.
And we'll be back in the morning. We'll see you then.
See you with a cup of tea. Ta-ra for now.
Bye.